Where do you think your limits are coming from? Does it look like the world, your past, or other people's opinions of you? In this episode, we look at our limiting beliefs and how they only ever come from one place. If you would like to feel freer in your life and see beyond what you think is stopping you, then this is the episode for you. Please join us as we explore the limitless nature of our being and spend an hour relaxing in the truth of who we really are. Enjoy the show. Hi everybody. Hi Moles.
Hi, James.
How's everyone doing today?
Hi darling. How are you?
Hello. Let's talk at the same time the whole time. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great, darling. How are you?
I'm good. It's lovely to have everybody here. I can see the room full of friendly, regular faces. So thank you very much. And yeah, tonight's going to be an interesting one. Beyond limitations. I tweeted yesterday and asked people what their limitations or they think their limitations are. We've had some very interesting answers, and we're going to have a semi-open space later on. If you guys want to come up and ask any questions, you're more than welcome. And we will have Bull of Bitcoin joining us later on in the show. And he is our newest sponsor. So we will want to welcome him. He's going to tell his story and we'll have a little chat with him later. So thank you very much to you guys. And if anyone wants to ask any questions, as always, if you don't want to speak, you're more than welcome to DM me and I can go through them later on.
Yeah, looking forward to speaking to Bull of Bitcoin later. His company, Bull Global, are our sponsor now. So that's really exciting. And for those that are listening on the podcast now, please share that with anybody and everybody, because we want to make this one of the biggest mental health podcasts in the world. You know, I always say it every week, we're a team. We need you as much as you need us. So, you know, please get out there and tell everybody about us.
We've had some great feedback as well this week, some really lovely messages from people that, well, the podcast is supporting them through whatever situation is going on in life, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a job, whether it's just dealing with the sort of everyday pressures. But I want to just give a special couple of thank yous to Daniel, Prince and Aaron for boosting us on Fountain. If you are listening on Fountain, that's where you can stream sats for listening, and also to Darren and Andy Price for the Buy Me a Coffees, which are donations that have come through to us this week. So thank you to everyone for supporting us and thank you for being here.
As usual, I'd like to tell you to slow down a little bit. You know, just leave your problems at the door. We're here to help you unwind and unmind. And anything that you're carrying with you, anything that looks like a big problem, you don't need it for the next hour. And there's really nothing that you can do about it for the next hour while you're listening to us. And whatever that is, that may look really different after we've spoken, because what we're doing is we're unwinding the mind. We're relaxing you. As you relax, you can find that a lot of the problems melt away. And when you come back out of this conversation and you look at what's there, it can appear really different. And also don't forget that we're challenging the ego with this work. You know, it can sometimes feel a bit uncomfortable. So for most people, they message us after how relaxed they feel. If that's not you and you feel a little bit of discomfort, don't worry, that's completely normal too. The mind doesn't always like being challenged, and often we're so used to believing our minds. When me and Jem come along and say, well, stop believing what it's telling you, it can have some resistance to that. What we're doing here is we're taking away from the mind, we're not adding to it. We're pointing away from the intellect and the noise of thought to a deeper truth of who we really are. So let all that fall away if possible, and just see afterwards, or maybe for the next couple of days, how you feel. It's often the quieter we become, the more we can hear, which is a beautiful quote. And also the more we can respond to the world in a better way, the more we show up, because what we're doing is not showing up from the state of everything being a problem. When we've had these conversations, we show up from a state of openness where we know we've got everything we need within us to deal with life exactly as it is. You know, we don't have to fight or resist. What we can do is we can actually show up and say, okay, what's in front of me? I'm made of what I need to be able to deal with that. We are happiness, we are peace, we are joy, we are resilience, we're all those things. And if you've forgotten that, or if you're not feeling that at the moment, I just want to remind you that that's true. Limiting beliefs is what we're talking about today. You know, it's beyond limitations. Well, what are our limitations? Our limitations are our own thinking. Whatever it looks like, it can only be one thing. Limitation can only come from your own mind. And that limitation is in place because actually the mind wants to protect itself. It wants to protect you. There can be previous experience that have included fear or, you know, maybe some trauma or imposter syndrome, whatever it may be. And you've taken that and you've turned that into a limiting belief because you've maybe shown up in the world and maybe you've failed, or maybe you've been embarrassed, or maybe something's happened. And then what we do with that experience is we turn it into something that's solid. We turn it into something that is real and then has influences over our other experiences, rather than seeing it as just a moment in time that actually can't touch us. You know, it comes and it goes and it can't stick around. It can only stick around in our memory. These limiting beliefs that can often start at a young age can look incredibly real. You know, we live by them. They can look so true because we've spent so long living in them, they just look like fact. It's a bit like saying to a fish, you know, how's the water? And they go, what water? They don't know it. They're just swimming around. It's where they live. That's our beliefs. That's our thinking. We don't notice it. And the beauty of this conversation is that we point you home to thought. We point you home to that you're only ever experiencing one thing, and that is your own mind. And the beauty of that is that you can do something about that. You can see through that. You can start pushing through those boundaries. You can start pushing through those limiting beliefs. Because those painful experiences of the past where we were embarrassed and the ego takes hold and stops us from doing that thing again in the future isn't truth. It keeps us stuck. Examples are like, you're not good enough, you're too old, you're too young, you don't have enough time. Maybe you don't think you're clever enough, you know, you'll never be successful, you don't have enough money. And all of that, when you examine it, is an untrue thought. If you can relate to one of those and you hold it up to the light of truth, it's just a thought that comes and goes. And you don't even feel it all the time or think it all the time. It's just you'll come up against certain situations and it'll kind of rear its ugly head and you'll be believing it. You'll think, oh yeah, I can't do that because of this. I don't have the time, or I'm not talented enough, or, you know, I don't have what it takes. And how can you not? We're all made of the same thing. We're all this human being having this experience in the world that we've all got the same thing inside us. We've got different talents, of course, but we've got the same resilience. We've got the same peace. We've got the same joy. We're made of the same stuff. So where you limit yourself is you. Okay? Always. And unfortunately, that can often manifest with some people into putting others down, into kind of making the other wrong to make us feel right. And that isn't helpful too. That keeps us stuck. So if we can look at all the ways that we keep ourselves stuck, for a minute, I just want you to think about where you may do this, because it can be really invisible, but it's those areas where the thing that we can't do, if we actually face it, and even if we try, because, you know, success and failure, who cares? You know, we learn from all of it. It's in the doing that the real juice lies, because if you do it and you fail, well, then try again, because you might succeed or go in a different direction. But you're always going to take something from every experience if you understand who you are. If you understand the nature of your own mind, if you understand the true nature of what it means to be human. Because you can fail, but it's not about that. It's about getting up again and carrying on and trying and just doing what needs to be done. That's who we are. People can make their world smaller and smaller via failure because, you know, they think, oh, well, I've failed, I'm not going to try anymore. It's like, oh, bullshit. Like, don't do that. Keep going. Life's a game to be played, so go and play it. Don't hold yourself back because of past experiences. And it's so easy because we live in a world that has made us believe that the past experience creates the moment. Okay, so what I mean by that, we're kind of lived in a world really in the last 100 years or so, maybe a bit less, where it's been analysis of the mind has got bigger and bigger. So in the analysis of what the mind is saying, we've started to believe a lot of untruths, which is that the past really can't affect you, whereas, analysis would say it can. Analysis would say that you can believe thinking so much that you can be a real victim of your past. But then why are there other people that aren't victims of their past, that have had horrendous things happen to them? Because if it was a truth and a solid fact that the past turned you into this kind of person, or the past had damaged you or broken you, why isn't that true for everybody? So we have to start challenging these old ways of doing things. Everything needs to evolve. For a lot of us on this call, we're in the world of creating a new monetary system, hopefully. We see that that old system isn't working and there's a new way to be. Well, this is what Jem and I have found within the field of the mind, is we've found something new. It's transformed our lives. This is why we're out here sharing it with other people, because we know that this is the direction that the world needs to go in. And we see that what's been happening before isn't true. Because if the old ways of dealing with the mind worked, everyone would be okay. And as far as I can see, there's a lot of not okay in the world. So it's bringing us back to this limitation is always coming from us, which is brilliant. It's great. If it's not the world and it's us, it's brilliant, because we can do something about it. We can break through. We can see thinking for what it is, which is an illusion. I know I've said before, we have 100,000 thoughts a day, according to Stanford University. And I know that for me, 95% of those are probably bullshit. And what it helps me do is the ones that are bullshit, I can just sweep away. They just don't really touch me. And the ones that are helpful, well, I can run with those. I can take those and use those. I can create my world out of those. So if you could see how stuck in belief humanity has become. Again, for many of us, we're breaking free of that in many different areas. We're breaking free of the monetary system. We're breaking free of, the powers that be are telling us. And we're saying, well, that's not true either. And at the deepest sense, we're doing it with our own minds. What's true for us? But you can see that humans have a great capacity for believing things that are false and standing by those falsehoods and saying, well, that's truth, and defending lies. We can see the defense of lies so much in the world, but we don't have to be like that. We don't have to do that. We can take these beliefs and use them as our teacher to see that they're not true. A limiting belief comes up. If you don't believe it and you challenge it, you break free. You find something new out about yourself. You see yourself in a deeper way. And think about the power of a belief. Think about how it creates so much. It creates a world. It creates the things in our world. It creates our feelings. Look how indignant or angry or how much feeling we can associate around a belief. And all thought and belief has to be a limitation of who we really are. Those moments where we fall out of all of that, we're in the creative potential of who we really are. We see before thought, and it's before thought where peace lies. And we've all had that experience, even before this understanding that Jem and I are sharing with you. We've all had the moments of falling out of thought and feeling at one with everything, feeling at one with the world, feeling joy, feeling bliss. We've probably associated it to something in the world, but it wasn't. It was falling out of your own thinking that allowed that to happen. So we don't have to limit ourselves. We don't have to believe what we think. So we spoke about this last week, the freedom in that. The freedom in suddenly seeing through your own thinking. The freedom of breaking through your beliefs. And I had a teacher, they said that really all beliefs aren't actually that helpful, even the good ones. It's when we really drop out that we get our best ideas. Because if you think about all the great ideas you've had, it hasn't come from a belief you already had. It's come through fresh thinking, fresh thought. It's like where we teach these principles, the first principle is thought. It's thought creates every moment that we have. Thoughts one after the other. This energy of thought creating our lives that we take so personally that isn't personal. And it gives us a feeling that corresponds with that thinking in the moment. And that's how our reality is created. It's an amazing system. And it looks so real. And that's great. It's supposed to look real. But when we sit and we stop and we come before it, We get to see the thinking passing by. We get to see the thoughts that are creating our lives. That's who we are. This is all happening behind the scenes of what looks real, whether we know it or not. These are the facts of how life works. So again, we're not looking at the content of mind and having to sort out the past and go over a belief and undo a belief and actually work on the mind. What we're just doing is seeing that the mind isn't telling us the truth. That's the freedom, that's the liberation, that's the sovereignty. I was on the Daniel Prince podcast. It's not released yet. Once Bitten, it's called. And we were talking about it and he'd not heard of it. And I was explaining the principles to him. We're having a great conversation. And he's like, oh shit, the principles are the private keys to your mind. I was like, yes, that's what we're talking about here. There's something to be seen that is deeper than where we've always been looking. We've always been looking out, and this allows us to look in. This is true for everyone. Before I knew it, this is how I operated. Now I know it, this is how I operate. And for many people, they don't understand the default settings of being human. They're trying to get the default settings out in the world. And they don't exist out there. So we pretty much overlook that peace of mind is a default, that happiness is a default, that resilience is a default, that no limitations is a default. The limitations are what we've added. You weren't born a limited being. The limitations are what you acquire. And you'll see people appear to have no limitations. They just go out and take on the world. And I'm sure they do in some areas, but you can kind of observe where people see themselves as limited, where they've created their own limitations. As you observe people, you kind of get to see what we're talking about pretty clearly. It's not always so easy to see in ourselves, but it can be quite obvious in the people around us. But, as we settle down into this conversation, it starts to become clearer. And it's in this clarity that these limitations fall away. And as those limitations fall away, as thought drops away, we have a calmer life. We have a more fulfilling life. Was it the week before last we spoke about presence? That's what we're pointing to here. When you're truly present in the moment and time falls away, so do limitations. See all the constructs that we've made up that we live by. It's so true. You cannot have a feeling without first having a thought. You cannot have a belief without first having a thought. What is a limiting belief? It was a thought that you had once, that you then had over and over and over again until it looked like it was a part of who you are. And seeing that it's not who you are allows it to dissolve. That's what we're pointing to here. Thought is upstream. Thought comes first. And that thought we turn into opinions, beliefs, behaviours, all of these things that we are. And it's beautiful that we're those things. I don't never want to take those away. But we get to see it. We get to come home and unravel it all. And for a lot of people, they're very caught up in their egos and their beliefs and their limitations. And it stops them living a full life. As I said earlier, what does that look like for you? Where does it stop you? I've got areas. I know I have. I've got limitations where they appear, but I try to go through them. I try not to let them stop me expressing the truth of who I am. Like, as an example, and I've spoken about this before, I could not public speak before I found this understanding. I could not even stand up in a room and say my name if I was in a group. I would be terrified. I'd be shaking. And it's changed so much to now, 9 years later, I can get on. I wouldn't care if there was 100,000 people listening. Just I can do it. It was a made up limitation that I put on myself. I said this a few weeks ago. I've still got the limitation if it was live in front of 100,000 people, but I'd do it. That would appear scary, but I would still do it because I would know that the limitation was my own thinking, that there can't be any truth in it. Yeah, so We mistakenly believe that our feelings and our emotions and our beliefs and our limitations have been caused by people or events and circumstances that have happened to us. But that actually leads to the false perception that things are outside of our control. And yes, things are outside of our control, in my opinion. Life happens through us, not to us. But my reaction, seeing that it's coming from me, allows me to see it's not the world creating it, it's me. That's how I can show up differently to different events, different circumstances, because I know it's always my projection onto the world, not the world's projection onto me. So life is always happening from the inside out, not from the outside in. So it's not external factors controlling us. It's not external factors creating our feelings. It's always our interpretation. And our interpretation will come via our beliefs. It will also come via our state of mind. So when Jem said earlier on the call that, she felt a bit low today, well, she'd be projecting that onto the world. So the people that were contacting her that she didn't want to speak to would felt like, too much. But in a better state of mind, that wouldn't have been a problem for Jem. So it wasn't the people creating Jem's experience. It was Jem creating Jem's experience. So the beauty of pointing to this, understanding, seeing through all of these things that I've pointed to is we tend to have less stress. We tend to show up in a different way. We tend to generally have more positive feelings, although we can still get caught in the negative ones. Absolutely. This doesn't take away our humanness. I can still get caught up. But the pointing home to the truth of who we are allows us not to get caught up for long. I was speaking with a client this week, and they were saying that the most interesting thing that they'd found was that they were going through something really intense. But what they found was when they were going through it, it wasn't constant. They were beginning to observe themselves, and they were seeing that they bounced out really quickly. And when they bounced out of the feeling state that was intense, they were okay. And then at some point they'd go back into the feeling state that was intense. Then they'd be okay. So they had an observation of this energy of thought and feeling that was coming through them moment to moment, was creating their experience. And that, yes, this intense thing was happening in their life, but actually they could have relief from it by understanding the system of who they were. It didn't mean the intensity of life had to constantly create their feeling. It gave them the freedom to be in the feeling that was coming through them at any given moment. It's so interesting to see it's all us, and it's so freeing, and there's no room for victim. You cannot be a victim in this understanding. You can only be this sovereign being that knows that even when you fall into maybe a victim mentality temporarily, you will come out of it because you'll go, that's all me. And the power in that, the power in understanding who you are creates a life where you can gracefully and gratefully go through it. You can show up because, ultimately life is going to be amazing. It's going to be shit. It's going to be fun. It's going to be challenging because we're here to have that experience. But fundamentally, you have everything you need within you to show up to life exactly as it is and be okay. Now, that doesn't mean to say you won't go through grief and upset and sadness and some fear, of course. But they're nothing to be scared of. Feelings are not to be run away from. They're not to be scared of. They're to be experienced. When we see that, we sit in the space of empowerment. And who doesn't want that? We all want this understanding and this power to know who we are. It allows us to not be pushed around. It allows us that strength. The character is an illusion, but it's also what we're here to have. We're here to be a human being and have the personality and the character and the ego. I guess the understanding gives us the ability to challenge that, but also be really comfortable in that, because it isn't something we have to get away from anymore. We can love ourselves and each other exactly as we are, because we see that everybody's coming from thought in the moment. But there's a grounding to who you are. There's a knowing to who you are. There's a knowing that you're something more, but you're also here to experience this little circle that you are, with whatever name you have, with whatever job you have, with whatever family you have, with whatever life you have. That's what you're here to experience. It's not to escape that. It's to live more fearlessly within that. Yeah, that's beyond limitations. That's who we are. It's not a conditioning. It's not the beliefs. It's not the opinions. It's not what other people have told you you are. Fuck that. That's not true. It's who you really are. Yeah, you don't want to be in the prison of your own mind. We're breaking you out. That's the freedom. That's what we're talking about here. Every week, the same thing in a different way, because we're pointing back to one truth. I love talking about this, as you know, every week, but limitations, how interesting. They all come from your mind. They all come from you. Who you are is unlimited, limitless. You couldn't possibly have a limitation if you come to the true self, if you come to before thought. The beauty is that the limitations are the things that we get to play with to see who we're not. So they're a teacher. You know, the beliefs, the limitations, the areas where we get caught are actually our teachers. And that's what we explore here. That's why I said at the beginning it can be uncomfortable. We can live our whole life with a belief or an understanding that keeps us locked. And when someone comes up and says, well, that's bullshit, you know, let's explore that. That's not true. What's beyond that? Where did you make that up? For the character, for the ego, there can be some resistance there. But that resistance, like, dig into that, because that's where we evolve. That's where we change. That's where we break free from who we think we are. That's where all the juice is. You know, when I work with someone, like, that's the fun stuff. It's like a hot knife through butter. Like, let's challenge that. Sometimes it's like a hot knife trying to hit a rock with some people, but hopefully it's a hot knife through butter. Yeah, it's just, to me, it's fun. It's like, what could be better than waking up and seeing who you really are? So I'm going to pass back over to Jem and see what she's got to say.
Hello.
Hi,
Oh,
darling.
wow. Hello. Yeah, it's just so funny because it always goes back to the same answer. I'm listening to you going through that, and I'm like, wow, I've really done the number on myself again. Just falling in and out of it. That little voice in my head was saying, well, this is life not going very well for you, and da da da. And it's just like, no, you have to sort of grab hold of yourself and think, there's nothing I can do about it. The world's not ending. My world's not ending. Everything is as it is. But I was just getting caught up and getting annoyed with everything. Just listening to you, it's like, wow, I got annoyed again because I've just wasted the last couple of days by feeling sorry for myself. It's almost like having deja vu constantly. It's like when you watch children and animals or young children, but they're unindoctrinated. They don't have these limiting beliefs. They have that innocence that they have not been told that they can and can't do anything. They've been unshaped by society and by people. And if we can be more like that, I always laugh and say I kind of just generally do what I want now. And why shouldn't you? When you start doing that and breaking away from what you think you should be doing or what you've been told to do and living a true life through what you know is right rather than what you've been told, that's the real game changer. And understanding the three principles really allows you to deal with situations better. So, I mean, the limitations, they're only you, which is kind of a bummer, but also very eye-opening because it means that you can do everything and it is only you that's holding you back. And I just can't stop smiling because it's like, oh God. And each time you do it or you get caught up, you do end up, everything's just lifted now, everything's fine. And all the stuff that I thought, I don't want to get on with that, or I don't want to do that today. Well, that was silly, but it's okay. It's just where I was. Just being able to understand everything. You know, there's times where you felt you could take on the world, and then there's times where you thought, I can't do anything. And the world hasn't changed. The decisions you're going to make or the projects you're working on, they're not going to change. It's how you see it. If you are in the position that you feel like, you can't do anything, or you don't want to talk to anyone, trying to do stuff and talk to people, that just wasn't working for me the last couple of days. So I've just done nothing. And that's been the best thing that I could do. Before, I would have felt very guilty about doing nothing because I had stuff to do. But actually, it's kind of like a double-edged sword. If you're not feeling it, just don't do it. And it sounds lazy, but it's the best thing that works for me. So thank you for reminding me and everyone else that all their limitations are their own. Yeah, it's just a funny old business life. You go in and you go out, and yeah, it's just coming back home. So thank you.
You're welcome, darling.
Twattington has left the station.
Again.
Yeah, that's my nickname, by the way, Twattington, when I'm doing well, not all the time, but when I'm doing things that are stuck in my mind, I just get called Twattington, and then I remember that I'm stuck in my head. So, yes, well, we do have a special guest today.
Absolutely. I'll just say that Paul is our new sponsor. I listened to a podcast he did a while back, and I thought we'd do Beyond Limitations, because when I listened to him, it didn't sound like he had many limiting beliefs. You know, there was a lot of drive, there's a lot of determination, there was a lot of people telling him he couldn't do things that he just went and did. So I thought it'd be a really interesting subject to do, to introduce him, to have him on as our sponsor, and for him to come up and have a chat.
Yeah, absolutely. Really looking forward to having you on. We'd just love to hear your story, sort of how you got here, and give our listeners a bit of a overview as to why you're here. So please come up whenever you're ready.
Oh, maybe he's having some trouble getting on. Bull, are you there? Oh, he's here.
Oh, welcome. Hi, Bull.
How are you doing? I finally managed to bypass it. It was Twitter permissions, that was all.
Oh, okay. How you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad.
Okay, darling. Okay. So, yeah, we just want to get you up. So tell us a little bit about you, if you don't mind, and the project, and also why you wanted to connect with us. It would be great to hear from you.
Yeah, not a problem. So we obviously had a look to see, well, what sort of subjects you cover and stuff like that. And I'm a property developer, have been since the age of 22. And COVID sort of knocked it all on the head. I was doing an 8-flat development, and yeah, ended up probably costing me about 600 grand with the many variables that was thrown in, like not having any building materials because everything was shut. Neighbours trying to take me to court, even though it wasn't my fault. You know, the list goes on. But then I went to full-time crypto, and I went from, telling 25 people every day what to do to staring at a screen for 12 hours on your own, which can have a massive effect. And I don't think I was prepared for that. Growing up and doing building work for so long, interacting, social, everything, getting up on an alarm and doing that sort of stuff, the usual 9 to 5 or 8 till 4, should I say. Going towards the crypto scene and, doing it on your own was a really big challenge for me anyway. And I think it's probably going to be the same for a lot of people.
Yeah. We're incredibly resilient, as we've spoken about tonight. But obviously we do have these huge changes, and some of our episodes we've talked about the changes that have gone on in the last few years all over the world, and people have had to change, how they interact in the world, what they're doing, where they live, really, really quickly and quite shockingly. So I do understand that, but it's good that, you're coming up and you're speaking about it. So you went through that change. Now, where do you find yourself now with it?
So we've been building the platforms out at Ball Global for around about 2 years, a lot of which is only coming to fruition the last 6 months. We've just purchased an online casino we've taken over, so we're acquiring other companies. And yeah, just trying to get it up and running, doing a full rebrand at the minute. So it's like 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it has been for the last 2-3 months, with 3 kids. Well, can cause problems, in and around the house. So that's a big change as well. When you go from, working what I would call as a normal job, construction or trades or anything like that, when you actually leave the house to working from home, it takes a lot to get motivated as well. Especially when, in the kids' holidays, for example, I've still been trying to get up at, 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, because it's so easy to get up at 9. What does it matter? I can just go on Telegram and, catch up with them a couple of hours. And it's the worst thing you could possibly do. I mean, if you set your alarm tomorrow for 5 and you get up, no matter what you do, I guarantee you'll feel 10 times better than what you would if you snooze your alarm till 8 or 9. And that start of the day is the biggest test, especially from what I found anyway, from working from home. with the kids being off and stuff like that, life tends to get in the way of them sort of things, and it takes a while to work out how it was. I mean, in the end, I started going running just to shock my system. I hate running. I literally detest it. And I just thought, right, you need to do something. I actually watched, I think it was a clip of David Goggins. I think everyone's probably aware of him or seen him. And it was like, everyone wants it to be 70 degrees. It's fucking not today. It's 100. Who gives a shit? I'm still going to run. And it was just like, I'm going to go running then. And then that was how I got into a little routine of going running.
I just want to point out what you said there, that it doesn't matter what's outside. It's like you were going running. It's like whatever degrees it is. And, that's something that we point to here as well. It's like you don't let your feelings dictate your day. Just get on with it. We can get so caught up in our feelings and see it all over the world now. It's like, how I feel. And we've become so self-indulgent. And that self-indulgence doesn't help us.
Well, no, it's victim mentality. If I wake up late tomorrow, it's easy for me to go, oh, do you know what? I worked quite late last night. Or there's always a fucking excuse. It's like, no, there's no excuse. You can be tired. Of course you are. If you was running errands or the kids are ill, you may have a decent excuse, but it's still an excuse. That alarm still goes off at 6 a.m. You still get a choice whether to get up or not.
Yeah, I agree. The other thing I would say is, though, what we teach here is that if you don't get up at 6 and you get up at 9, there would be absolutely no point beating yourself up over it. It would just be then hit the ground running with the day, and the next day do your best, because we can also get self-indulgent in those feelings. Like, people feel like beating themselves up over something that's going to make it better or make a difference, and fundamentally it doesn't. It just makes us feel like shit.
Yep.
It's much easier to just do what we can, show up where we can, try not to be self-indulgent with the feelings, but just kind of hit life, do what we need to do. And what I love when I listen to you and when you're speaking now is that when you've been hit by life, you really have always come up with a solution and gone with it. It seems to me when I listen to your podcast and with what happened to you in COVID, it wasn't like, that's going to stop me. I'm just going to find something new to do.
Well, yeah, exactly.
And you do literally grab the ball by the horns.
Exactly. Well, the trouble is, who's going to come and save me? No one. No one's going to come and finish the build off for me. I can't go and open up the wholesalers. So what have I got to do? I've got to ring around and see who's got stock. Waste 12 hours if I have to on the phone. And like you said, if you didn't get up at 6 and you got up at 9, all right, pretty shit. It is what it is. What did you have to do in them 3 hours? Catch up.
Yeah.
Skip lunch, have coffee for lunch, lock yourself in the office and catch up, then try and get up at 6 o'clock the next day.
Yeah, it sounds like you're super motivated and very determined. You remind me of, I can't remember who said it, but the destination that you're going to go to, and you don't really care what journey you have to go on to get there. You know where you're going, and that's all that matters. And I think having that laser focus is really amazing. But I wanted to ask you, are you enjoying yourself? Because it sounds like you've got all the energy in the world, but are you having fun while you're doing it?
It's actually the opposite. So I haven't got all the energy in the world. I think that's why I go and force myself to go running and stuff like, shock the system, so to speak. But yeah, I really am enjoying the crypto stuff, especially with what I know, what I want to do in the future, try and change people's lives for the better. There's so much being built, other than what we have at the minute, which we'll probably go on to in the next month or so. It's definitely something in there more rewarding. Building the house, you get to see it afterwards. Pitching a roof, you get there, you go the next day, you can see the roof. This one's like a slow burner, but I know what's at the end of it will be more rewarding than the building side of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And it sounds like you're on such a path. It's really nice to hear, because once you've got those goals and you know where you're going, life just seems to path its way for you. So it sounds like we've all got a similar vision of what we want to create, where we want to be in the future with our projects. So I think it's a really, really good match. And yeah, really happy to have you on board. And what was it that made you want to sort of work with us?
It was definitely as I say, the mental side of it. The catalyst was the big shock to the system of going from such a social job to almost an isolation job. And we all know what crypto Twitter can be like. It's like the lion's den. There's some brilliant minds there, and there's the trolls that are just relentless. I've had my fair share of run-ins with all them sort of people, with all the scammers and stuff like that. I think unless I found crypto, I was in my little building bubble, go to work, come home, go golf at the weekend, you almost get set in your ways. And it was only when I started the trading side of it, and I wouldn't say I got depressed, because I never went to the doctor or anything like that. Obviously, typical man thing to do, just try and work your way through it. But it wasn't something that you could work through it. So yeah, it definitely opened my eyes to how people can get stuck in a rut. Because I put on a bit of weight. I stopped going training because I didn't really care. Shorts and a t-shirt around the house. Didn't shower till the afternoon because I didn't have to. And then when you hear that there's people like yourselves that are reaching out to people who not lost hope. That's probably a bit of an extreme statement, but looking for a little bit of help in that regard, then it's I'm all for it, and that's why I reached out to sponsor.
Yeah, it's amazing. Thank you so much. And chatting with you now, as Jem said, I can see why it's such a good fit. And we've definitely got the same visions. You've got, within the crypto world, we really want this to be one of the biggest podcasts in the world regarding well-being and mental health. And you can see that we're doing something different. This isn't about getting into your story. This isn't about what's happening to you. This is about waking up to who you are and your resilience. And think you've got an awareness of that. Even if you don't know you had an awareness of your own resilience, it's definitely evident in having a conversation with you. And the other thing that when I listened to you before, it's like all this resistance that you've had in the past to doing things from the outside of you, and you kind of trusted your gut and you've gone for it. And I think that's something that we love too. It's that wisdom, that kind of gut feeling that you may not think I can do this, but I've got a knowing within me that I can.
Well, that mindset's been there. My mum would have to be telling you probably early teens. Do not tell me that I can't do it. Like, I'm so delusional. Even now, I laugh when I say it. But even now, I think, if I trained, I'd be faster than you say bump if I really tried. You know how fucking ridiculous that sounds. But
I love that.
Obviously, that's an extreme situation. But my wife would say, "Well, of course you wouldn't." I said, "Yeah, but I know. But if I was proper trained, I would have probably done it." It's absolute delusion. But I think you have to put that on board as well, and like the drive forward. So when I run, I don't run to music. I run to like a mashup of quotes and interviews, podcasts, that sort of stuff. One of the quotes that always gets me going if I'm tired is, there was an American speaker, and he says, "I'm too hungry to be satisfied with where I am right now." And I think that's me. I don't think I can ever settle. I don't just want to build a crypto project. I want to build the best one. I don't want to be top 10 in the marketplace. And I won't stop, I don't think, until we're here.
And what I love is that I get what you're saying, and I love that, but it feels like there is still a level of contentment there. There's that drive to do that, but it sounds like you've still got, your wife, your kids, your life, and, appreciating what you have whilst driving and forward to have that vision. I get that, because I think that's for me and Jen with this project as well. It's like, I'm completely cool. I love where I am right now, but I know this has got legs and we're going to turn it into something amazing.
Perfect.
And I think it's not missing, as long as you're not missing the moment for the vision of the future, then that's brilliant.
Of course, yeah. Completely understand that.
Yeah. Then everything's great, because then it becomes fun. Put the playfulness, the fun into it. And that goal, it's like, allow yourself to maneuver with that. It may not go exactly in the straight line. It definitely won't go in a straight line, in fact. And it's just going with those curveballs and going, okay, so where's this going to take me now? And the destination will be the destination. But as you said, I really love that you said that you're having fun with it, because for me, it's like this project is about waking up, taking the seriousness out of it all, having fun, and just getting people to go beyond their limitations and their thinking and their bullshit.
Exactly. Well, I think most people's mistake is that they think the fun will happen when they reach their target. So, if you wanted to hit your first 100 grand, when you hit that 100 grand, you're going to look back and you think, you know what? When I was grinding that out and I got to 10 and 20, that was the fun bit. Because as soon as you hit 100, guess what? You're going to want 500. And, you've got the 5-bedroom house, what I sold, a couple of years ago. It's like, well, I don't want that one now. I want an acre to build a bigger house. So, and the fun bit was building the house, getting it to that 5. It was never achieving it, because you know what? You get bored. You get so used to it so quickly. I want to buy a 10 grand Rolex. Well, you go and buy that, and I guarantee, I've got a Fitbit on now. I don't even wear my watches. I just wear a Fitbit all day. But when you're striving for it, you think that's the fun bit. It's only when you look back, the first day when you get the watch is great, that sort of stuff. But I think it's the thrill of the chase, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. We've talked about this on other podcasts that we've done because it's such a great point. It's the carrot and the stick, but you're never going to get the carrot. If your carrot is happiness, it's like it's here right now.
Yeah.
You don't have to find it. It's already within you. So, and again, it's like I was having a drink with someone a couple of weeks ago, this guy, and he got companies and this and that. And he went, do you know what? I was happiest when I lived in my council house when I was a kid.
And that is the
He said,
case.
and the more
Yeah.
money I've got, the more pressure that I've got. And actually, like you, the last couple of years have been really, really hard. And the money hasn't meant a thing. And it's like, yeah, I totally agree. It doesn't contain anything. What's contained is within us already. All that stuff is just to play with.
Yeah. It shouldn't be the main focal point as such. Because like you say, touching back on that, when I first set my company up, the building company, it was just me and my brother-in-law. He was helping me. We was finishing at 3, small job, one at a time. And it was probably the best workplace, work-wise, happiest I've ever been. And then you think I'm doing multi-million-pound builds with, 20 to 30 people on site. And I was miserable. It's stressful. Everyone's after you, from the councils to the neighbours. It's just never ending. And it is trying to find that balance. And again, I always wanted to do like a huge, great big build, multi-million-pound build. And when I done it, it's probably the worst thing I ever done. But I did it. In 30 years' time, I'm going to look back and go, I wish I did that, like my granddad did, who was a bricklayer. I'm going to look back and go, do you know what? It went tits up, but it is what it is. I tried it, and it's on to the next one. Wipe your mouth.
Yeah, brilliant. And that's what I love about this. It takes the profound to the practical. We're taking something that can sound really deep, really spiritual in some ways, but actually what we're taking is an understanding of who we are and turning it into something really practical that allows us to live the best life possible with exactly what we have in the moment. That's such a gift. It's such an amazing thing to have because it's all here and it's in this moment. Everyone on this call, wherever you are, whatever's going on, it's in this moment right now where happiness exists. Whether you feel it or not, that's a different thing. But I guarantee you it's there. So we're not pointing to what's wrong, we're pointing to what's right. And that wakes up a whole new world for us to live in when we see it, when we get those insights, when we have those moments. It's like, oh, okay, right, I get it. I see it. I know what they were talking about now. And it's wonderful to have you on. It's wonderful to have you as our sponsor. And I think it's a great connection. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. It really reminds me as well, just hearing you two chat about it's never about the destination. It's always about the journey. And there's always so much to learn. It's about experience. And I keep getting the Steve Jobs quote in my head, thinking about our projects, that it's the people who are crazy enough to think that they can change the world are the ones that do. Mm-hmm. And I feel like we're all not necessarily, well, probably, possibly, depending on what day it is, labelled as crazy. But it's the vision that, no, I'm not going to listen to what the status quo is. I'm not going to do what I've been told or what the Gemma thinks I should do. There's something higher than that. There's something observing that knows that there's a destination that we want to head in, but it's the process and the journey and who we help, who finds us, this whole lovely pathway that's ahead of us that we've got no idea what's going to happen, but we know in our hearts we have our values and our integrity of where we want to be, and that can't be fucked with, excuse my French. But when you've got that clear vision and you know exactly where you're going, it doesn't matter what comes up in the way. And I think hearing you speak, Bull, really, really confirms that. And you should be a coach too.
No, he's fine where he is.
Yeah,
don't want to take on too much.
Yeah, I'll stick to the sponsor.
You could be the best coach in the world.
Exactly that. Exactly that.
Totally. I love that. You've got such an all or nothing attitude, and I won't do anything unless I know I'm going to be bloody good at it, because I lose interest. Unless I know I can be very, very good, I don't see the point. I just don't enjoy it as much. And I think it can be a blessing and a curse if you don't focus on exactly what it is that you want to do. And I've had to learn that the hard way.
Well, I think mine's a curse, in all honesty. To a certain degree, it's got me to where I am today, so that's the good side of it. But one little story before I go, just to show how far it goes. if I see someone doing something and I think, well, that's quite impressive, I will 100% go, right, I need to beat that. And I won't have fun. It could be going to the gym. It could be running, beating a time. I won't have fun doing it. It'd just be like that, like you said, the carrot on the stick. But for an example of how, not petty, I don't know if that's the right term, but we was in Sainsbury's and I swapped checkouts because I thought the woman was taking too long. And I was with my wife and I was watching the person who went behind me and they got slightly in front. And I started sweating because I was getting anxious. I was spraying all the stuff on the conveyor belt and telling her to hurry up and bag it so that we could beat the person next to us. And we walked past and I beat them by like 5 seconds and the relief was unreal. And my wife said to me, "You are actually mental. That's ridiculous."
Oh my goodness.
I said, "Yeah, but I fucking won though, didn't I?" And she said, "Yeah, but you won against someone that didn't even know that they was in a battle. It's ridiculous." But
that's amazing.
that's how
I'm going to sign you up for some one-to-ones.
that is how far and how ridiculous it can get at some point. It's like that one-upmanship.
Well, that's really interesting because if you think about the conversation tonight, it's about that you have a belief. It's a belief you've made up. There's no truth in it, but your ego has taken that as you have to win to be okay. It's all nonsense. So, it can fall away. If you can make it fun, that would be great. But again, it's just how these beliefs play out. Underneath that behaviour, there will be a belief. There has to be.
And it's like, what's the worst that could have happened? It's like, if I didn't win, what would have happened? Nothing. My life wouldn't have been affected. But I would have been thinking about that for about 4 or 5 hours, what I could have done to, should I have put the toilet roll back to nick a few seconds? That sort of stuff. It's insane when you think about it.
Everybody's mad, I know that much. But what I love about you is you're seeing it and you know it's nuts. You're not saying it. We all do stuff where it's like, for a lot of people, they get that in their cars when they're driving. The ego really kicks in the car for some reason, and people really get caught up. And it's just those areas. And actually, if I was working with you, I'd say just observe that ego, and just see what happens if you don't do it. Like that uncomfortable feeling of not going in for the competition. That would be where I'd have fun with you, because it'd be like, what's that feeling when you don't do it? And what's beyond that feeling when you don't do it actually will be something amazing. But we get so caught up in because the behaviour seems so fixed that we don't do that.
Yeah.
So, it's really fun to play with these things.
Well, the irony is in cars, my dad goes mad, but I'll let people in. I've got no... So it's really weird that it becomes... I think it's like if my mind decides that that's a game and I have to win it, then that is it. I can't think of anything else apart from winning. But yeah, just driving the car, which you would expect to be the worst, like you say, because people get in there and get road rage. It don't, so I can turn it off then, but just not on silly stuff. Strange.
We're strange creatures, that's for sure.
Well, I've got to go and get little man off into bed, so I'll be signing out now if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being our sponsor. We look forward to this kind of carrying on for a while and building our relationship up and seeing ways that we can help each other. And thank you again.
Perfect. Thanks for having me on. Really enjoyed it. Cheers.
Thanks, Paul. We'll speak to you soon. Have a lovely evening.
And you. Bye.
Bye. Oh, that was brilliant. And my brain is just telling me to find out where his local shop is so I can go in the checkout next to him and beat him. Seriously, that's the kind of game that I want to play.
Well, we could have like a supermarket sweep with you and Paul.
100% I'm down. Let's do it. It's got to be in Waitrose though, so we can really, really freak them out. They don't scan like Aldi and Lidl's.
Amazing. Oh, we're getting near time. I think we might save the questions for next week if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine, unless, people are really relying on them being answered.
If it was something that was life or death, please DM me your question. If not, we'll go through it next week.
Yeah, I think tonight's been really, really great to have Bull on and really hear someone that's in the space that's building. Also, the different thought processes and things that, inspiring people are always people that do things differently, that stand out from the crowd, that push through their limitations. It might look like they have it easy, as in they just flow through life. But that's because they're understanding things differently. They are not listening to that outer noise and they're focused. But as we know, everyone has their hang-ups, everyone has their strange things that they're trying to deal with. But by stripping it away and coming back to who you are is the best way to live an enjoyable life. So it was really lovely having Bull up. Any questions we'll go through next week. What another wonderful chat. If you guys have got suggestions or topics that you want us to cover, please contact us.
Thank you, everybody. And again, please go on the podcast. We're on Spotify, we're on Apple, and just, follow us. That would be great. Yeah, always just share with as many people as you can. That would be amazing. Thank you to everyone for being here. Thank you for showing up. And there was a lovely quote by Helen Keller, and it kind of points to what we're speaking to today. And it's the marvelous richness of the human experience would lose something rewarding, some joy, if there were no limitations to overcome. The hilltop would not be half so wonderful if there were no dark valleys to traverse.
If only there were no dark valleys, but I suppose they're all in our mind, aren't they? All self-created, all limitations.
Well, it gives the contrast to the human experience, which is actually a great thing. We just don't always see it that way. So, we're here to have all of the feelings, as I always say.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you to everyone for joining us. If you are listening on Fountain, please give us a boost and we will see you all next week. Thank you very much.